Okay.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the South African election special. No, that was really somewhat misleading. I was going to just ask one question about favorite leaders in history or around the world. That was what I was going to start with, given that we're in an election. And I'm going to ask Francis and Junior. I'll give you like 10 seconds to decide. Who impressed you as a statesman and leader that you've always admired in your life? I'll start with you, Junior. You're usually quick off the mark with stuff like this.
Well, mostly I hate the buggers, to be quite honest, because none of them ever delivers on anything. But if I have to go back and think about it, maybe on the American side, it will be, now my age is showing also. The guy, what was the actor? Not Arnold
Ronald
Schwarzenegger.
Reagan.
It's
Ronald Reagan.
Because he had a boldness about it, especially when he dealt with the Russians. You
Yeah.
know, like you said, he in that one meeting in Saturday, and he actually had his bloody 45 or something with him in a briefcase or something. But I think those guys were still straight shooting to a certain extent, but today, don't know.
Yeah.
It's something I wish we could wipe off face of the earth, politicians.
Yeah. No, we do seem to have a dearth of leaders around the whole world. I mean, everyone's so controversial, but nowadays, no buts, I shouldn't say but there I say it again. The thing is, people are living nowadays in a 24/7 news cycle, and every single moment that they have outside of their offices and inside their offices, I suppose, is recorded. So I do.
No, but if we look at Africa, there's one particular gentleman I'll look at, and he was in Central Africa. I think I can't remember exactly what the country is. We basically sold everything. We just had a car, very basic things.
Yeah.
And they, I think it was Gabon, one of those countries. I'm not quite sure. And he turned the whole place around. But eventually he got taken out because he was proving that Africans can stand up for themselves, so that an African country can do their own thing. And and as most charismatic, and it's not that he was charismatic, he just got on with the simple stuff, and he did the simple things. It's the same thing that's happening if we have to look at a current one, but I'll say, okay, I'm willing to look at, then it's Argentina.
Yeah. He's doing really well now.
He's doing very well because everybody said it's impossible to do what he's doing, but he's doing it.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it comes down to.
Economics professor. Yeah. No, it's really good. Francis, what do you think?
Okay, so I think for me, I have one prime example, and I would always talk about this person because I feel like we have lost our chance at this person here in Nigeria. So he was a one-time governor of a state here in Nigeria. And, he ran for the position of presidency last year. And I think I've had this conversation with you where I said that the other guy rigged his way into office, and this person did not get into office, despite the fact that, a lot of people actually came out to vote for this man. His name is Peter Obi. But I mean, we are stuck with who we are stuck with now. And, it's quite interesting because in a country like Nigeria, in Africa, is the one politician that we've had that, no one has been able to pin one corrupt crime on. Nobody can. I mean, during the elections last year, elections would just be the time where they would want to dig out your past, smear your image, and nothing stuck. Like, there was really nothing that they could hold against this guy. And so, he's the one person I look up to when it comes to leadership, because he exemplifies everything that we would want in a political leader. Transparency, humility, and whatnot. So, yeah. His name is Peter Obi.
Thanks for that contribution. That's really insightful. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have a quick go at this. I've always been a big fan of a guy by the name of Jan Christian Smuts. Jan Smuts was a South African leader way back, and as a youngster, he fought for the Boers, the Afrikaans nation, I suppose we can put it like that, against the British at the turn of the century. And then he fought in the First World War with the British, against the Germans. And in the Second World War, he was promoted, or he was one of Winston Churchill's chief advisors. So from one side to the other, but he was such a statesman that he was, world renowned. And they actually, if I'm not mistaken, Junior, he was responsible for setting up the United Nations after the Second World War. So he was a tremendous South African statesman going way back. Anyway, I'm not going to carry on about that, but I thought it'd be a lovely way just to introduce today's Understanding Leadership Growth. Once again, I'm not going to read the slides. I'm just going to ask you guys for just a little bit of insight around the headings that I've written there, and I'll just introduce them, around self-awareness. And I've just made a few notes here about recognizing your strengths and areas for improvement, and using self-reflection and feedback that you get given, and then embracing a growth mindset around self-awareness, I suppose. And I think there's one tool that I actually do use, and it's an app called Calm, C-A-L-M, and it's really around reflection. And I think, well, people are talking about this more and more and more and more, about, going inside yourself and having stillness in your journey about thinking and about leading. And just as a matter of interest, last night I watched a program. It's called The Diary of a CEO, and it was the relationship between exercise and your brain, and how more efficient your brain is if you do regular exercise. You have disciplines that you participate in every day, like meditation and as I say, exercise. And just actually the awareness, and it happens to me often, and I'm sure it happens to you too, of you being away from your job, away from where you're working. And it's in those moments that you get those light bulb moments, those flashes of inspiration that come your way. So the other 2 points that I was going to just touch on very briefly was about continuous learning. An example of that in my own life is that I've always done a series on what's called edX, EDX, and I've done a number of MBA courses that are 12-week long, recognized courses that I've really thoroughly enjoyed. I've done, just for example, business accounting and leadership and influence and marketing, but they're all MBA approved courses. So continuous learning has always been a practice that I've enjoyed doing. And then building resilience, and I think I've just touched on that. It's about stress management techniques, learning from failures and setbacks, and then cultivating a positive and adaptive attitude. Now, Junior, I'm going to be very brief today. We're gonna give you a couple of minutes just to have your thoughts on some of these topics that I've just covered. And Francis, I'll get you to follow on from him as well. Thank you.
Basically, self-awareness is hit and miss for most people, because what you got to reflect on is what limited material you have to reflect off, and that is the people around you. So what you're aware of is what the environment around is pushing at you.
Yeah.
And if you're unaware, what is really your innate potential? What is it that you're born with? It really becomes more a miss than a hit, because some things you are good at, some things you're not good at. And why you're good at one, why not good at the other one is always a mystery. So we put assumptions around it. And there's no definitive framework for what it is. So in one area accelerating, you really go for it, and then the next moment you run into really a brick wall, and you just can't get past it. You can't do more. And this is what people don't understand about self-awareness and about talent and stuff like that. There are certain natural limitations that's built into you, which allowed you to adapt around those things. And we refer to it as the fluid intelligences. And unfortunately, and I may have mentioned before, in complexity, when you work with complexity, is not one plus one item is 2 and then another added is 3. No, it's exponential ratio or relationship between the items. So when you add one item on top of another one, is you actually get exponential relationships, because it's not just, yes, if it's 2 items, it's fine. But as soon as you add a third item, then you've got ratios, 2, 2 versus 1, 1 versus 2, and then you have got the bottom 2 relating to each other, and you got the top 2 relating to each other, and then those 2 are relating again to the bottom one in a second scenario. So when we deal with complexity, it becomes quite phenomenal how quickly the complexity adds up. And one of the early on discoveries that we did is that we talk about empathy and all these things that go with it, EQ and all those things. Those are very poorly measured, and most of it is built up around bias and what perceptions people want to see. Empathy and EQ is one of the first things that disappear as soon as somebody's overstepped his mark in terms of complexity. And the very easy way to see it is actually how easy they go into conflict, when they get challenged, when they get criticized, or when they can't solve something, and somebody tries and force them to solve it. And then what you'll find is a very quick where it turns into personalization, where they actually start attacking each other instead of attacking the problem.
But don't you think when people are leading and they can't sort of lose it and get personal in a situation like that learning from one instance, when once someone's been through that experience and then realizes, hey, you know what, I really messed up now in this situation by either blowing up or losing my cool or not responding professionally or in a professional manner, surely they learn from that, and that learning experience would then prove or help develop, let me say, their self-awareness of handling a situation like that in future, or again, when they're confronted by a similar circumstance.
It sounds like it's doable for most people, because when we talk about it, it seems natural. That's what you should be doing, because that's what everybody tells is continuous learning, is part of it, continuous learning, but it's not. It's much more complex than that. If you are already in a position where you've been over-promoted into incompetence, you may not be aware that you've been over-promoted into a position of competence. Those things only arise once you start hitting a series of complex interactions, where sequentially you then fail the one after the other one.
Yeah.
And what makes it worse is when you have people around you that say, but you should be knowing that. Why didn't you see that? Why did it happen? It's your job, it's your responsibility. Unfortunately, not having that context around how do you fit within the bigger context of the complexity of what's happening around you, the way that our education and training and everything is built up around the baseline of a memory muscle development process. Storing knowledge is within the means of 95% of people. It's not a problem. Just some can recall it faster, easier, and they can remember where to. It's like a switch and a search item. It's basically your brain's like an AI. where they go and fetch the right data and collect it and then regurgitate it basically on demand. And people think that they know, they really understand, but it's not that. It's the conditioning of repeated use that creates a solution that they do understand, because if you really had to go and question them very deeply, you very quickly understand if you ask a what if scenario. But they actually don't understand, because as soon as you ask a what if, they're out of their depth and they cannot explain how this knowledge becomes applicable.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull you back a bit again, because this is, I mean, it's very complex, and you were talking about the brain, and you know, your brain is like AI. It's going to go and draw on something, an experience before, to simulate what's happening now so that they can respond appropriately. Now, that prefrontal cortex fight or flight brain response is going to pump you full of adrenaline. But if you've experienced this before, let's say a bull is charging at you, and you know, next time just step out the way and let the bull go past. This is a farm analogy here. I mean, you're going to be revved up, but next time you sort of know better what to do. So isn't that a self-awareness or continuous learning, something that's not necessarily linked to talent or external? Well, it is an external force. My question is, that is learning, surely, and people would respond appropriately, you know, when faced with confronting situations. I think that's the example that I'm really interested in learning about.
I think if you look at it, that is a linear event, cause, effect, linear connection.
Yeah.
It's not a non-linear event where the underlying drivers are invisible.
Okay.
So it's easier to simulate if a bull charges you, you want to go out of his way. If a lion charges you, you want to go and try and replicate the same. For a bull, it may have helped if you just jump behind a tree. The cat, a lion charging you, is going to go after you around the tree much quicker, much more nimbler. And then you think, okay, I want to get out of this. So what do? I'm thinking now, I'm on the fly. I'm thinking I'll go up the tree. But unless you go about 20 foot or 3 or 4, 5 meters up a tree, the lion's most probably still going to get you. And if there's a flattish branch, the lion's still going to get you because it's going to go up the tree after you.
Yeah.
So the learning event is still very limited for most people to a linear sequence of cause, event, action.
Okay.
And that is very difficult for people to really accept. Yes, you are learning, but in context of learning, continuous learning means continuous adapting known knowns, pulling in unknown situations, unknown facts, pulling in new emergent patterns. That is where true learning happens.
Okay.
And that is when you then create new knowledge and you create new insights, which you then can teach to some people in a different way. But then again, even teaching it to other people cannot be taught the same way I'll maybe teach it to you. I have to teach it to somebody who's maybe lower on a complexity scale in a completely different manner with completely different examples, still to reach the same result.
Okay. So once again, I'm going to have to pull you back a bit. Look, let's face it, we're looking at graduates or new leaders and mid-career leaders. So the level of complexity that they're going to be challenged with may not be at the level that you are suggesting right now. Am I right?
No, they are actually being challenged at that level because they're facing old systems, which is entrenched in people.
Okay.
But they're coming into the workplace with new knowledge, new methodologies, better understanding of technology than older guys.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they see opportunities and they want to experiment with those opportunities, but now they get pushed back.
Okay.
This is
Good
the way
point.
we've always done it. This makes people comfortable. So it's not what they have learned in the university. It is what's naturally available in them to learn with. and the fluid capability to adapt around those complex changes, where they don't feel challenged and say, oh, shit, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do now. It rather more excites them to want to find out more, even if they make mistakes. For them, making mistake isn't the problem, because they're not trying to prove a competence. They're not trying to prove a specialization. They're not riding on the, how can I say, oh, I've got a PhD or I've got a master's or whatever in mathematics. They're not riding on that. It's irrelevant to them.
Yeah.
They're riding the moment and what is occurring and what they're learning in that process. And they're quite willing to accept, hey, I've made a mistake. Oh, sure, I didn't realize, I didn't see that. Okay. And the thing is, what they actually learn the most from is not the complex stuff, it's actually the simple stuff.
Yeah.
Because what they miss out on is the simple stuff, because they're already functioning at a much higher level than normal people. But where their actual learning comes from is learning that not everybody can keep up with them, and that they have to adapt. And then they have to split things up, make it smaller batches, smaller sprints, if you can put it that way. Okay. Instead of taking, it's like Superman jumps over a building and then he waits there often and say, so where have you guys gone? Oh, we were running around the block, and half of us is off sick, and then there's roadworks and there's it, and the policeman stopped us. And one guy said, no, I have to go in and have water. I can't make, okay. So that's the difference between correctly selected leaders and poorly selected leaders.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Junior. Francis, come on, you come in on this one now. That's a hard act to follow, but I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
All right. So, I mean, it's, after listening to Junior, it's actually a lot to come after that. But I mean, I think I will just try my best to, speak on, let's say, building resilience, right? In terms of leadership, I think the one thing one has to understand is
Are you there, Junior? Okay, Francis is frozen.
Is how well to build their resilience, how not to back humps to certain things, because you're going to be leading teams and they go according to plan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Yeah,
Did you get me?
You cut out for
all right. So I said that. All right. So I said that as a team leader, I mean,
You're freezing, unfortunately.
there are times when your plans do not follow through as you important. It's very important that you have your own resilience. Hi, Rick.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hi, Rick. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, someone is trying to call my phone and I'm using my phone for my mobile data. So the person is interrupting. I just keep cutting the call. I'm so sorry about that. So I said that as a team leader, right, it's important that you build resilience, because when you're leading a team, your plans do not always go through as you planned them, right? And so you have to be able to have built resilience to know that even if the plan I have on ground did not follow through, we are still going to be able to scale through. And this is something that you want to pass on to your team, right? And so when you're trying to grow yourself as a leader, when you're trying to build your capacity as a leader, it is important for you to be able to build resilience, right? And I'm just thinking of ways by which one can actually build this resilience that we're talking about. And I feel like, first of all, it's understanding that it's in having confidence in your ability as a leader. You would not be put in that position if you have not shown certain qualities that for lack of a better word, that qualify you to be there, right? So you should have confidence in the fact that you know what you are doing. You should also be able to work. You should also be able to what's that word? You should also be able to work well with your team well enough for all of you to come together to have a plan, right? When you do have this relationship with your team members, then whatever situation that you and your team find yourselves, you'll be able to go through it together. I mean, that's another way of building resilience. So for me, that's just it. It's important to build resilience, not just for yourself, but also to be able to lead your team effectively.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's actually having the confidence in the capabilities of, or your own capabilities and those of your team. Just to summarize what you were saying. So yeah, thank you so much.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I'm going to flick on to the next slide. And Junior, I know you have some views about this. I'm going to quickly introduce some of these. They talk about self-regulation, about mindfulness and self-control. And I think you've touched on that already, about whether people would actually be able to respond calmly to any challenges that came along their way. And then too, I'm going to talk about quickly about empathy and really understanding other people's perspectives and considering other people's points of view and where they come from, putting yourself in their shoes. And then finally, the social skills that go with all that. And that's to do with communicating effectively, and then resolving conflicts with diplomacy and tactfulness. So those are some of the additional sort of emotional skills that one would need in a leadership position, where you've got to really think on your feet and be able to self-regulate, to show empathy, and to develop, which is really tough sometimes when people get personal and perhaps confrontative, if that's the right word. And perhaps there's confrontation in a very subtle way. You know, it might just be something that's almost unsaid, where you read someone's body language and you can tell that there's something going on that is not responsive to you, or they might be very, or not so subtly, saying something to you and the group about your contribution in a meeting, say, for example, where they either don't support you or move on fast when you've said something, if it's a leader. So I'm going to start with you this time, Francis, and I'm conscious of time. I said we would only go for about 20 minutes or half an hour. I'll give you a minute or two just to share your thoughts about enhancing emotional intelligence.
All right. So, I mean, in terms of enhancing emotional intelligence, I think it's emotional intelligence is quite important for like someone leading a team to have, right? I'll just give a quick actual example of something that I had seen happen. So someone was promoted to lead a team, and you know, he had a team of just 2 people, right? But within a month, he lost the 2 people on that team. And I'm talking about a real life example. And why this had happened was because he lacked emotional intelligence when, you know, it came down to actually understanding what had happened. He just would not be reasonable with his team members, and, you know, kind of resorted to bullying them to get work done. And so he would even threaten and tell them that they would lose their jobs. And so at some point, they were like, I mean, they can't continue to work in this kind of situation. And I had heard that one of them, you know, was sick, and he showed no empathy. I mean, the person had a medical condition for like a year, and he said he had no idea what the person was talking about. And I think these are the things, right? These are the issues with leading a team. It's not just enough to have like the technical skills to lead a team. There's also the emotional part of it, where you have to develop your social skills. You have to actually have empathy. Everybody is living an existence that is quite as complex as our own. You know, when you think that, oh, my life is complex, someone else is having like a life that's as complex as yours. And when you take that into account, as a team leader, you understand that aside work, people are actually going through a lot in their own personal lives. And I think we should put our what's the word? Let's say our emotional intelligence foot forward to be able to not just lead the team, but also to support that team to reaching goals.
Exactly. So it's really knowing that people 16 hours of the day, of the 24 hours of the day, are not at work and have other issues that are facing them. And sometimes they may be good and other days they may not be, you know, and it's really just having that personal insight that and being able to, in some instances, detect something, especially when people are good at hiding their emotions and what have you. So my question to you, Junior, is this, is that are social skills a learned or an innate talent that you have inside you? Do you have to learn them, or do you have it inside you, that empathy and the social skills that we were talking about? You know, the diplomacy and tactfulness and supportiveness. Are they learned, or are they naturally part of your psyche?
Well, some people just tend to have that natural ability. But then again, if you look again at the level at which they function or can function, it's usually at a better understanding level of what's happening around them, what's happening with themselves. I think that's one of the most critical things. You can learn diplomacy, yes, for sure. You're not necessarily born with it. But again, and this is where we go back to people like Kazimir Dabrowski and his fear of positive disintegration. How you behave is basically a direct relationship what environment is developed around you like. So if an environment is very much self-centered, and this is what most of the environment around us is actually self-centered, people looking out for themselves. It does not necessarily put them in a confrontation with others, but that self-centeredness may mean that diplomacy and things like that may be only centered around serving yourself. But if it is no servicing yourself, then it may not be displayed or may not be made available. The other thing is what we got to deal with is that, like I mentioned before, as soon as something puts you into a predicament where you are no longer feeling safe, we are no longer being able to function, the ability to stay functional and to stay diplomatic is lost on most people, because they're already in a fight or flight type of thing, you know, fight or flight type of situation. And in that instance, when that reptilian brain basically takes over, you know, it's all about defense and it's all about self-protection. And because you actually have to literally consider being in the other person's shoes. That's what empathy is all about, is how are they experiencing this at the moment? And what am I going to do that's going to influence us or change that for them? And unfortunately, for most people, that's impossible to do. And especially in a first-time meeting, because you never met the person. So you are just bouncing off their symptoms or their reactions. And you're reacting to their reacting, and it becomes quite messy, very easy and very fast. You know, and because somebody walks out of a meeting where they already been beaten up, and when they walk into the next meeting, they're getting beaten up again. So what you're going to have? Where's your empathy going to come to? Okay. So, and this is why the model, what we worked on, is my approach to this is totally maybe a bit different, is we try and look at it from that point of how does this person actually physically able to process or adapt to what's happening around them? And where are they actually going to be pushed into that situation where they're no longer feeling comfortable, no longer feeling safe, and then they'll start getting defensive or negatively responding to criticism. Even if it's positive criticism, they will respond negatively to it because they feel personally attacked, and that's the thing. Because that's how they react to the environment that's around.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult. It is not easy. And to say, oh, we're going to teach them and test you for empathy.
But it is part of growth. I mean, it is part of leadership growth. And I mean, something that you might have been offended by in your early career and not be able to handle later on in your career because you've been there before, you would be able to handle
it. It's not a matter of, it's understanding why it happens. And this is what's never explained. Why will that happen? Why will you respond that way? And that comes back to your innate endowment. What are you born with? Because if you are technically very good and you have been in a very structured environment where you perform very well because the systems allow you to perform, and because there's not that much variability. This is a mistake when they select leaders, is because they perform so well, they can accelerate other people because they have controls and they have got fixed dimensions around them. But once you take those systems and you take those support mechanisms away, where it's like a little kid swimming with those little water wings, very confident. The moment you take it away, what does a kid do? They sink.
Yeah,
I know. My father at some stage stopped laying those things up. He just put it on,
Yeah.
I used to run and just put it on, jump in the water and swim. And
Yeah.
the next time we went to this holiday resort, I went and jumped in the water and I was swimming halfway across, and I'm talking that place, it was 10 foot deep. And then I realized, shoot, I haven't got my fins on, and down.
Yeah. Okay,
and that's it.
Thank you so much for that. Let's move on. I've got 2 or 3 more quick slides that I want to just touch on for a second. And remember that the umbrella heading for this is about understanding leadership growth. The point, I guess, long-term planning and decision-making are things that one learns, I suppose, over time to become better and better at. But if you're not necessarily innovative or creative, how are you going to think strategically if you weren't born or had that, well, I'll come back to that innate innovativeness or innovation, or that creativity gene in you? I'm going to give you a very quick take on that one, Junior. Innovation and creativity. Can you learn that?
No. It's about visualizing, seeing things that does not exist.
Simple. That's a good answer.
Simple.
What about you, Francis? What do you think? Are you going to argue with Junior today?
Oh, no, I don't think I would, because I mean, creativity for me is something that, has to come naturally. So
okay, cool.
No, I'm not going to argue that.
We're gonna skip past that one, and it's one that we can always come back to, because I'm really interested in discussing how people have come up with superbly innovated ideas and can change things just by looking at things completely different. I think that's a subject for another day. But we're going to carry on. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I think I'll rather go to the final slide. Remember, it's the overall, the umbrella topic is around leadership development. And this area too is of interest to me around your leadership development and your personal branding and the stature or the kudos that you are seen with as your career develops by your peers, your contemporaries, by your teams, by your staff. How does that development help you in your growth, your personal branding, in New Zealand, they have a Maori word for it. It's called mana. Mana. How does your mana grow when you progress in your career? How do people see you differently, and why do they see you differently? And we'll just sort of close off with this question. How do people see you differently as you grow in stature in your leadership growth area? Junior, why do people see you differently?
I think it's the fluidity of people allow things to happen and make things happen easier and faster. That is, and it's not something that you are, from my context, from my experience, that you actually go out there physically to build. It's just a natural development, a natural evolving process.
Right.
As soon as you have to think about impressing or creating a brand that you are now something, you're really over in your head. So a lot of times, the better leaders, they will be unaware really of what their capability is, especially in a younger age.
Very true.
People will go and select them and they'll say, but why was I selected? What did I do? What did I do different?
Yeah.
It's exactly that. You didn't go out to do something different. You just did something different. You didn't plan to go and do something different. It's just the moment you get involved, things happen different, in a different way, faster, easier, and there's less confrontation. So the branding as we associate with also is not that you actively associate with people just to be seen to be building up a brand or whatever, but it's a natural comfort, who you naturally comfortable with, who's around you.
Yeah. Very
They say
good.
birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
So you're not going to seek out people who's functioning at a higher level than you, because you're going to eventually just make them cross, because you're going to come across half the time as an idiot talking to them. So you're going to go and gravitate rather to a lower level where you're much more comfortable being in control, rather than to an upper level where you're totally out of control and out of context for all time and struggling to keep up.
Yeah. Look, that's a very good insight. It's when people are in a position of leadership where they have that natural influence and impact to drive their team towards a goal. And, you know, I think it relates to your experience over time, where you've got this calm sense of knowing that you're on the right track. And that's your brand, you know. Car companies, for example, their reputation and their experience and their reliability and the competence that they've built up over years is their brand, you know, and they're known for that sense of solid reliability. I'm going to end off there and ask Francis. Francis is going to close off the session today with your final comments.
All right. So, I mean, on this, I would just say that in terms of building influence and impact in relation to your leadership growth, personal branding, yes, is actually great, but one should be able to live up to whatever it is that they put out there as their person, right? Yeah, networking also is great. I mean, platforms like this present one, right? Platforms like this present one, where you get to talk to people who are also leaders in their own organizations, can also be great, because you get to learn from their experience. You get to know what works and what doesn't. You learn to experiment. And also, I think people still underestimate the power of having a mentor, someone who has been in the same position that you currently are, and is able to tell you or able to hold you by the hands to say, this is what you should do, this is what you should not do, this is how it worked for me, this is how I was able to develop my leadership over time. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's a good way to end. Thanks, Frances. That's wonderful. Look, guys, election day in South Africa, very quiet, but nonetheless, I'm really enjoyed having our chat today. Thank you, Junior. There was, and I combined both your name and your surname, Juman, Junior. Thank you so much for your always superbly smart, clever, insightful contributions. I'm very grateful for your continued support. And the same applies to you, Frances. Thank you so much for your comments and contribution today. And we'll do this again next week. And once again, thank you so much. I'm not even going to put up my, well, I'll just for the sake of the video, well, I haven't got my contact details on this particular one, but too bad, next time. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And we'll chat again soon.
Okay.
Cheers then.
Have a good day. Cheers, Frances.
Bye.
Cheers, Frank.
Bye. Stop recording.